The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host and producer, Kristina Lou, along with co-host Otto Los, who's a volunteer, supporter, friend, all-around great guy, Otto. And I am so excited this morning because we are talking to Bea Franklin, a.k.a. Busy Bea, a.k.a. Supermom. She's a Nassau County resident and Centenarian, and we're just going to get some words of wisdom from a Centenarian. Bea, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's very nice
so
to be
glad
with
to have you on,
WCWP.
Yes, I know that WCWP has long been in your family. Your son's been here, and you graduated from here.
That's right. Many years ago.
It was just yesterday.
Sometimes it feels like it was just yesterday.
Well, that's a good thing.
Bea, I'm 88 years old, and I'm like a teenager with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sometimes I feel like a teenager again.
Yeah. You know, you always feel like, don't you feel like you felt when you were younger? For the most part?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, your head.
I don't believe in getting old.
No. Older.
Older. Yes. Quite a bit older.
Yeah, well, that's true. But that's the deal, right?
Yes.
Well, Bea, let's start from the beginning. You had such an incredible life. I mean, I was going through all the material that you sent over. So let's just start, Bea. Where were you born?
I was born in Philadelphia, 1924.
And now let's get a little backstory about your dad. I know he was quite influential. So let's have a little story about your dad.
Oh, my dad was Jack of Manny Mo and Jack, which was the Pep Boys, and primarily in Philadelphia. It's where it started. It's grown to be, and I know in California, I don't know, I don't keep in touch with the family who's running the Pep Boys, but I know that it's quite great wild spread. So yeah. I don't know how many states it's in. And my father was Jack of Manny Mo and Jack.
Although what made him start Pep Boys? Was that something he was always interested in?
That was my Uncle Mo. And Manny was Uncle Mo's friend. And it was convenient for my dad to be a lawyer so he could handle the legal prospect of Manny Mo and Jack. But eventually we moved from Philadelphia to New York, and my dad found his own, not Pep Boys, it was known as Strauss Stores at the time. And it's been a very good life ever since.
I was a customer of Strauss Stores.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah. Now, I understand that you moved to Forest Hills when you were 9 years old.
That's correct.
So that puts you around 1933.
Yes,
I was
correct.
born and raised in Woodhaven, and I lived there till I was about 30 years old. But I'm looking back on it, and in that time frame, living in Woodhaven, Forest Hills was like another country. You know,
That's right.
You know, you just didn't. We didn't have a car. So, you know, it was like there was Forest Park in the middle of
That's right.
of Forest Hills and Glendale and all that whole area. So
That's right.
It was a very different world. And I only heard about Forest Hills when Left Rack City kicked in, which is a long time ago.
We knew, my husband and I knew that family in those years, the Fracks.
Yeah.
In fact, I think either one of my sons or one of my nephews dated one of the LaFrac daughters.
Oh.
But
Well, it was a major complex that they put in that area.
Oh, yes.
It changed things quite a bit, I would think, with you
Yes.
living there. Yeah.
It's really it's just such an interesting, story, and you have so many tidbits. And I want to know, of course, the burning question is, how do you stay young? What's your secret to life?
Thinking positively. That was my
That's
husband's mantra. You have to think positively. And so I've reached 100 years and I've been still thinking positively.
Yeah.
Well,
good
I
for
like
you.
that. That's our motto on this show too, Bea. We always try and find the silver lining, and keep it positive.
What was that? I didn't understand.
We always try to find the silver lining, and
Oh,
just keep it positive.
Absolutely. That's what my husband always said. Think positively. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to realize that that's what we had to do.
Yeah.
But he
You know,
made
your
it.
husband, we read quite a bit about also, and I know this is about you, but that's part of your life. I'm always interested in World War II and what people went through. I was old enough, I was between the ages of 4 and 10, let's say, when it was going on. But I remember it was part of life in those days. It was every day, all day. And
Yeah.
your husband was a photographer during that time. And
Yes.
I just wondered, was he, like I read he was involved with invasions and went to Dachau concentration camp. Was he pretty much always just a man traveling with a camera during the war?
As far as I know, he before the war, before he entered the war service, he worked for a friend of his father's, who was in the camera photography business, and Jerry was always interested in photography, so they gave him a job, and he worked there until he was called to service, or actually he volunteered when he was 20 or 21 to enter the service. And he was in the service until the war ended. And
Yeah, now I understand you went through all of these photos basically and put them into albums.
What was that?
You put all of his photos into albums. You basically reviewed them all.
You're not coming through clearly, but
Okay. Did you go through all of these photos and then ultimately put them into albums?
yes, I did. He brought home a copy. His photographers had to go through. I forgot. My age is showing right now. Not Secret Service. Another part of the service that they had to enter their copies of photographs that they had taken for the day, and it had to be approved to be published. And as a matter of fact, when Jerry came home and I had all these pictures for his albums, he warned me not to publish any of them. And it wasn't until years later that I realized you needed to have permission from the people who were in the pictures or the company to be able to print them in public. But that we reached to the turning point for that many years ago. But I still haven't. I think Ken has had one of his pictures printed for the public use, but I haven't published anything that's been in the albums. Some of it really should be published, so maybe my children will take over and see that it's published. Because I felt that you're
beautiful.
Well, I always felt that he needed he had to have people notify him, or notify the public rather, that these pictures were taken by Jerry Franklin, And my husband never felt that way. I felt that way for him, but he never felt that way for himself. But some of the pictures have been published. I think Ken may have told you that one of his pictures was published in, I don't know if a newspaper or where, and the person who published it asked Ken if he could interview my husband Jerry, and Ken told him that my father his father had passed away, and he said, "Well, what about your mother? Is she alive?" And Ken said yes. So he says, "You think she would agree to having me interview her about your father?" And he said, "Well, I guess so." When he checked with Ken, and I said, "Yes, of course I would." I think that anything I can tell about the World War II, and Jerry in particular, I would be happy to talk about. And that's what we've been doing ever since Ken gave me a career.
What do you remember as a person who was home, if you will, during World War II? What's your not fondest memories, but memories? You were at that point a teenager and young and older, actually.
Yes.
What do you recall? I mean,
My first memory, as you asked me about it, was that I was in the University of Wisconsin then, and I had many memories of young men who were called to the service. And there used to be a joke by the men who were eligible to enter the Army that they were going to shoot their foot so that they didn't have to go into service, because none of those boys wanted to go to war. And unfortunately, 2 or 3 of the ones that I was friendly with, the Times used to print the names of those boys who were wounded and those who had been killed. And reading those lists, 2 or 3 of the young men I knew at Wisconsin had been killed. So that's one of my memories. The other memories is I've met some interesting people through the photographs. I've met interesting people when I was in college. As a matter of fact, the year that war was declared by the United States was on a Sunday. And that Sunday, Life magazine had sent a photographer and interviewer to the University of Wisconsin. I don't know what the purpose was, because we never got that far. But we had made arrangements with the photographer of Life to be in a certain place for photographs. And of course, war broke out, and that kind of an interview was not of interest to anybody at the time. So we missed having our pictures taken by Life magazine. So that's one memory. And some of the memories are funny and some are sad. And I'd had friends who were killed and friends who were in the service. And I have some interesting, funny stories to tell, but
well, we'd love to hear them. You could share whatever you want, Bea. We certainly would love to hear anything.
I'll tell you a very funny story that is only because it was during the time of World War II. But I was on a date in New York, in Manhattan, and my date and I were standing at the bar, and he was busy talking to the bartender, and a young man standing next to me started a conversation with me. And he appeared to be in his early 20s, and he didn't seem to be a New Yorker. And he wasn't in uniform, which was unusual for that male age group to not be in uniform. So I asked him where he was from, and he said he was from California. I said, "What are you doing in New York?" And he said, "Well, he was here for an interview." So I said, "Oh, no, for a convention." And I said, "What kind of a convention?" He said, "Automotive supplies." Well, I think you know, my father was involved in Pep Boys, and he had his own stores at the time, Strauss stores. So picked up my interest in what he was talking about. So I said, what do you have to do with automotive supplies? He said, oh, no, first I asked him where he was from, and he said, California. So I said, oh, okay. And then he said, automotive supplies. I said, well, how are you affected with automotive supplies? He said, well, I own a store. I said, what store? He said, did you ever hear of Pep Boys? So my and I said, isn't that Manny, Mo, and Jack? So he said, yes, and I'm Mo. And I turned to look at him in the face and I said, Uncle Mo, how you've changed. And he said, what do you mean, Uncle Mo? I said, Mo is my uncle and Jack's my father. And he started to laugh. And he said, if all the girls in New York were me to tell that story too, I had to.
I love it. Well, Bea, we have to take a break. So after the break, we're going to continue talking with Bea Franklin, aka Busy Bea, who is a Nassau County resident and centenarian, and she's giving us all about her words of wisdom from a centenarian. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
WCWP is your home for great music and great conversation. You'll find all that and more on WCWP.org. Listen live on the web, check out the lineup, subscribe to podcasts, and stay up to date on the latest station events. Get in touch with us and let us know if you like what you're hearing. And find out how you can support or get involved at the only community public radio station serving Nassau's North Shore. Plus, sign up to get a free bumper sticker. It's all online at WCWP.org.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Lou, with my co-host, Otto Los, and we're going to jump right back in with Bea Franklin, a.k.a. Busy Bea, who is a Nassau County resident and centenarian, and we're just having a great morning with you, Bea. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm still interested in World War II. There's not that many people around anymore that can talk about World War II. I, even as a kid, remember rationing and banners in the windows, depending on if somebody was in or whatnot. You recall all of those things, rationing?
I remember sugar rationing. Yes, very well. And wondering about young men whom I knew when we lived in Forest Hills and who were in the service. And it was always interesting. It's interesting how we learned about World War II. As I said, I was at the University of Wisconsin. I was in a dorm and we were close to the street. And I heard a young man calling out, I forgot what it was, extra, extra. And so we all ran out to the street to hear the extra. And it was World War II. We have just called war was, we were entering the war. And I immediately thought of my brother who was in the service. And he must have known that I was thinking of him because it wasn't very long before he called me and said, don't worry, everything is going to be all right. And you just take care of yourself, whatever. And fortunately for him, I guess, because a lot of people young men who didn't go overseas were looked on as not good soldiers because they didn't fight. And that used to bother my husband very much because people who lived in the United States and weren't active participants in the war did a lot of what they had to do to keep the war from going. I mean, women who went into manufacturing arms. And, you can't isolate people that way because they contribute a lot to what the war needed. Manufacturing arms. I mean, I can't even begin to go through everything that women and some men went through. And the young men who never were called. My brother was never called overseas. He was an Air Force teacher. I'm not using the right word, but he trained men to fly airplanes. that was very necessary, but it didn't send him overseas. And some people looked down on him because he didn't, quote, serve. He served in his own way.
He very much served. He gave his time, committed his time to the country. And so he had a good fortune. He had another ability that he contributed. So that's true. Yeah. I remember, like you just talked about, I remember I was like 8 years old, and we did paper drives, and people collected fat and would bring the fat to stores. They would use that for ammunition. I remember a story, and I do remember like it happened yesterday. 8 years old, and people in those days, my mother sent me to the butcher shop to get meat. And I go to the butcher shop, and I find this stuff on the floor in the butcher shop. I have no idea what it is. I pick it up, I bring it home, and it turned out to be ration tokens for meat. Oh. So I was like a hero when I came home at 8 years old. Unfortunately, somebody else lost their rationing tokens, but I didn't know any better. You know, but I remember very much everybody was in on the deal. You know, Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, it didn't matter who you were. You were in, you know, and very different spirit.
Oh, yes. And there used to be war drives to raise money for the service. It was sad, but it was interesting time. And we got through it. And I'll tell you another story now that we're talking about the end of the war. And I don't know whether Ken mentioned it to you, but it was at the end of the war in Europe. And it was announced during the summer. I was in a class at NYU at the time, and the word spread that the war in Europe had just ended. And everybody, I don't know why, but we all decided we were going to go into Times Square because that was the place where things were going on. And my friend and I jump on the subway. We get off the subway. We walk into Times Square. And right in front of us, I don't know if you've seen that iconic picture of the soldier grabbing a female and giving her a kiss in Times Square. But that happened right in front of where my friend and I were standing. So we were first to see that picture, which became an icon.
You're in the background somewhere in the photo.
No, I'm not. We're not. I looked, but we're not in it. But yes, we were certainly part of that picture and seeing it. And that was the fun. It was such excitement, and it was people who were crying. And I mean, it almost brings me to tears just to think about it, because it was such a good time, and we were still worried about Japan at the time. But we won the war. Unfortunately, we lost too many young people's lives, but I'm happy that I survived. I'm happy that my husband survived. And when we were in the Vietnam War and my oldest son was called to service, I had friends who condemned me for letting him go because there was so much against being in the Vietnam War. And it was a very sad time both ways, for me as a mother and for being a mother of someone who was serving in the service. To me, and I may be very old-fashioned and wrong, but to me, my country, right or wrong, and I couldn't impress my friends with that because a lot of people were affected by it. And most of my friends sent their eligible sons to Canada. I didn't want to do that. It's my country. And if we had to support my country and it means going to war, unfortunately, that's what's happening. And people don't seem to condemn me because I wouldn't send my son to Canada. And he did go. He went to Vietnam. Thank God he came home safe. So
unfortunately, most wars are young people are the ones who get killed. Many of them. And what a lot of people I don't think understand that I do remember about World War II is when somebody went away, they were away
That's
3, 4, 5 years with minimal communication, not like today. You didn't just pick up your cell phone or send an email or a text message. You would wait with a letter that weighed, excuse me, like nothing, because you would send airmail because it was less expensive and the paper was lighter. And it's the sacrifice that was made by people during that stretch. 4 years away, hand to hand or whatever combat, or even if you weren't in combat, the communication wasn't like today. You were gone.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you recall that with people.
Oh, yes. I used to send aerial letters to Rick when he was in Vietnam. And funny thing is, now that I'm speaking with you, I recalled that at one time while he was in Vietnam, I airmailed a salami to him.
Not the important things, right?
To this day, I don't recall whether he ever received it or not, but I can remember going to the post office and sending it.
Oh,
It's funny you should say that. My mother sent me a salami, and I remember when I was in the Navy in peacetime. All right, but I remember when I got this thing in the mail that I shared it with everybody. Everybody was so happy to get this salami. And we all shared it. I couldn't eat the whole salami myself.
Right.
yeah,
Salami.
you have so many stories, Bea. What I also loved looking at your bio is that you did a lot of travel.
Oh, yes. I love
So
travel.
I'd love to hear some good travel stories from you. Your favorite memories, anything you want to share.
Oh, well, I'm still traveling. My son,
Well, that's what I like to hear.
yeah, my son Rick is my firstborn, and he likes traveling also. And we have a very good friend of ours who's an actor, and is in what do you call it now? Traveling shows. The last one he was in was Pretty Woman, who had been a movie, but he was in the traveling show of Pretty Woman. So wherever he appeared, California, Manhattan, small towns in the United States that had theaters that they would produce copies of Pretty Woman. And so we go whenever he's appearing anywhere in the United States. Rick and I are on the plane and on our way out to go to all different places. And we have a good time. We have a lot of fun. And the nicest thing that happened in all of these traveling shows that we did, we were in, now I don't remember what town we were in. We were visiting this actor friend of ours. And we were in... it was a version of Pretty Woman, and we had seats to see the show. And at intermission that night, it happened to be in June, and intermission, we're sitting there, Rick and I, and a gentleman from the traveling group appeared in the aisle during intermission. And he's thanking all the people who belong to the local theater that puts copies of these shows on. And he's talking and thanking the people. And then he said, "Oh, and incidentally, we have someone in the audience who's celebrating her 100th birthday. Would Bea Franklin please stand up?" And I was amazed. I thought it was the nicest thing. It was our actor friend who had notified that particular gentleman to mention how old I was going to be and that I was in the audience. And after that, when intermission was still on, I had young men walking over to me, "Happy birthday, happy birthday." It was such a It was so nice and so unexpected. So,
You just registered something in my mind, and that is at 100, you're traveling. We're not in the studio together, but are you reasonably mobile, or do you need assistance? This is like for the people who might be listening who are hesitant to travel because they're older. What tips do you have?
well, the one word I have is live. If you're alive, don't sit home and worry about what used to be. Get out, do something, go for a walk, take the dog for a walk, do something to keep alive, not sitting in the house and watch television all day or listen to the radio and feel sorry for yourself. I thank God that I'm still here and I'm able to go out. I have a caregiver now, and she's wonderful. But it's great to be able to. I can afford to fly anywhere I want to do. I can travel anywhere I want to go. But some people just sit in the house, even if they can't afford to do something. You don't need money to go for a walk. And
I agree. I'm always using the phrase, don't go on the pity pot, because, most people don't care. It's your problem, So be grateful for what you have and not what you don't have. And I agree 100%. I hope I can be sitting around when I'm your age and do my pep talks, if you will. I agree 100% with your husband's positively thing. We all go through stuff. If you live long enough, you're going to go through stuff. That's part of the package. And you're going to lose people, and you're going to lose ability, and that's all part of the package. And to be on the pity pot about that stuff doesn't do anybody any good. Your phrase about keep alive is great. I love it. That's a golden nugget of the day.
And people are very, very nice. We were in the theater last night to see what's the name of it? All of a sudden, I'm forgetting the one about the woman who lives in an actress in Hollywood. Oh dear, I don't have the playbill in front of me, but anyway, it's a well-known show. And why am I telling you this story?
This is happy. You've been to so many plays.
Yeah, it's about people who are so thoughtful. I have my caregiver is with me all the time, and she's a wonderful person. But we were walking into the theater, and it's difficult for me to walk for any long period of time now. And so she was helping me, and one of the gentlemen who was standing in the lobby said, "Can I give you a hand?" He extended his hand to help me walk into the theater, and people are so thoughtful and so considerate. And 2 or 3 of the young men who were part of the ushers helped me get down to my seat, because Rick, my oldest son, and I always sit in the first row center. So it's a long walk from entering the theater and getting to the first row. But I managed somehow or other. And one of the ushers just grabbed my arm and said, "Here, let me help you," and took me down to the first row. So people, and it's so appreciated, And
do you use a walker or a cane?
When I'm in the house, I usually use a walker. I can't manage a cane, so I use a walker when I'm in the house. And when I'm out in the public, I have Brittany, who's my caregiver. She's right alongside of me, so she helps me travel. She's my walker.
Well, we had to take another break. I'm having such a great morning talking with Bea Franklin, aka Busy Bea, who is a Nassau County resident, Centenarian, and just my kind of lady, exude positivity. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Lou, along with my co-host, Otto Los. We are jumping right back in with the incredible Bea Franklin, aka Busy Bea, who is a Nassau County resident and Centenarian. And you're just incredible, Bea. I knew I was going to love this interview, but it's even better than I could imagine because your spirit and your message is just so important for anyone listening of any age. So I have to thank you again, Bea.
Thank
Now,
you. Thank you for giving me the
one of the
opportunity.
things that people don't recognize when we get older is that we were actually young at one time. I always remind, like my grandson just turned 10. So I look at him and I tell him, do you know I was 10 years old once? You know, and they look at me like, what is this man talking about? One of the things that I recall reading about you was your 18th birthday in the Hotel Astor, which was big time back when.
That's right.
Do you recall that event? And,
Very much. It was very impressive because it was I was 18, and my mother and father had given me a party on the Astor Hotel, which was in Times Square. They had made a party for me on the outdoor restaurant on the roof of the Hotel Astor. And Tommy Dorsey was the orchestra that was appearing on the dinner shows. And so we're sitting there, and then one of the orchestra players said that they had a special singer. He was new with, I think they said he was new with the orchestra, and his name was Frank Sinatra, and he was going to be entertaining. And that's the first time that I heard Frank Sinatra. And a funny story about it is he was started out being a very young, thin, but I mean thin young man. And I was out to dinner with my parents one night in Manhattan, and Frank was appearing as the major singer, the entertainer in that restaurant. And so he gets up to sing, and he's standing right behind my mother, and he's singing. And when he's finished singing, my mother said, "He doesn't have a chance." That's been a family joke ever since. She's not a good person. She's not a good person.
I was probably about 18. I was at the Waldorf Astoria, and I heard Benny Goodman. It was a memory to me. I love that kind of music, and that was an experience. But that wasn't for my birthday. That was just I was on a date.
And it's nice to have some of those memories because it makes you feel young again. I remember when I was young, and it's a great memory. I don't regret becoming 100 years old. I enjoy it. It's such fun. And if I mention to someone when they see me walking with an assistant, and I'm not walking that fast, so I sort of apologize and say, "I'm sorry for holding you up, but I'm 100," and their eyes open wide. "You're 100?" "Yes." "Oh, I never would take you for 100." And I think to myself, I don't take myself as 100. I take myself to being me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like I said, a teenager, 88, but I don't take myself for being 88 either. I'm still like, I don't feel like I'm 88.
That's right. People, and I certainly don't feel like I'm 100. I know my limitations and I can't do certain things, But that doesn't make me feel old. I feel I'm 100. That's it. And I go
So I
on
think
with
you have
life.
you have to be grateful for what you have and not what you don't have.
That's right. Yeah.
You must have some good philosophies that you've built up over the years to get to your stage in life with this positive attitude. Maybe just give us a little gut feel for, why you have developed this attitude and
Makes me stop and think is because sometimes I'm annoyed with myself that I can't do something anymore, or I can't go somewhere anymore. And I get annoyed with myself. And the first thought that enters my mind, there are so many more people who can't do most of what I can do. And they don't feel sorry for themselves. They go out and make the best of it. And that's what I have to remember, that somebody is always much worse off than I am. And there's no reason for me to fare badly for myself, because I still can enjoy life. I can still go out. I can go to the theater. I go out for dinner with my son sometimes. And I'm living. And that's what life is all about. Live your life. Don't sit home and moan about what you can't do anymore. You still have plenty to get ahead of you. And you go and enjoy those few days or years. It's not acceptable by some people, and I feel sorry for them because they're missing what they should be enjoying in life. That's what life is all
can't
about.
agree more. I mean, I know people who retired, and they never had a good day since they retired. And like you said, they bored. I said, how can you be bored? You got to do something. You can't. You can't
right.
wait for it to come to you. You have to do it, not the other way around.
Yeah.
But how come that, you can talk about it till you're blue in the face, and some people are not going to change. It's going to be that way. And I think that's one of the things I have learned in my life is I'm not going to change people. I can try to encourage them, support them, or whatever, but you can't change somebody who isn't going to do what you think they should do.
Yeah. I went back to college for a master's degree when I was 45. And I became an elementary school librarian. And I loved doing that. I loved being with young people. And one time when I was teaching in Merrick, and one of my, I guess it's my grandson's age, was in the school that I was going to be teaching in for the day. And when he heard that I was going to be in the school, he said, "Aunt Bea, please," because I always kiss my grandchildren and my cousins and everybody. And he said to me, "Aunt Bea, please don't kiss me when you see me." So I said, don't worry, I'll just say hello. And I did.
Now, you got your master's degree right where we're sitting, which was CW Post. It's now LIU Post, which is interesting. And we understand that one of your sons also actually was on this station at LIU Post. So there's kind of a connection there between your family and this radio station, really.
Yeah. He was the music somebody or other, and he met interesting people as doing late nights, midnight programs with, I can't remember now, someone who was really famous, I think was killed in an automobile accident, but Ken would be able to supply you with the name. But Ken interviewed him and some other people who were well known in the music industry. I'm not well known in any industry, I'm just well known, I guess, by the way I feel about life. And I don't.
Well, you're well known to us, Bea.
Thank you, but see, I appreciate it. I appreciate that Ken gets these interviews for me. But it's the message that I feel is important, not the person. And I love talking to people. I talk to strangers if I can, if there's something to talk about. And I love doing these, as I said, I love these interviews. Someone in the family can't understand why I'm doing it at my age. I should be relaxing, I guess. But to me, this is very relaxing, and it's fun. And he can't understand.
You
I have
mentioned
I enjoy
interesting
it.
people before. I'm sorry. You mentioned interesting people, and I read that you had Rocky Graziano and some Ranger players and whatnot.
Brad Park.
that
Do you
you-
remember the name Brad Park? He was with
Yeah,
the Rangers.
sure. I was a big Ranger fan. I used to go to the Old Garden on 50th Street. in
Oh, right.
Mayfield.
Right.
You know, almost every week with the high
Yeah.
school GO card.
Oh,
Yeah, and we would see a triple header actually on a Sunday. The
right.
Pee Wee somethings, I forget now, the Metropolitan Mets, and then the Rangers at night. And back when Chuck Rayner, remember names like that?
Oh,
He was
yes.
goalie,
Yeah.
no mask.
Oh, yes. No mask. Yes, we enjoyed, my husband and I really, we had Sunday night tickets for the Rangers. And it was, we had my husband and I, and then we had an extra ticket, and we would take somebody else who was interested in it on a Sunday night. We would go to the Madison Square Garden, and it was interesting. It was fun. And at one time, they had taken a picture up at one of the far ends of the ring, and my husband was seen sitting behind the glass at that end of the ring, and so he claimed his name to Spade. That he was well known because he was in. I don't know if you used to go to the Ranger fans when there were a group of Indian men, not from India, but part of our country. And they were avid Ranger fans, and they used to carry on at the end of they had seats at the end of the rink. And oh, how they carried on. And they would be drinking. I mean, it was fun in those days.
You know, it's funny you say that because it's too bad I didn't know you. I would have taken that third seat sometimes. But we used to get tickets behind the goal, no higher than row E, because the puck, if you sat behind the goal and you were up high enough, you're going to get hit sooner or later, and that hurts. But I used to see like Bobby Hull, Gordie Howe, all those kind of players coming in, playing against the Rangers. And I went every week. It was fun.
We had one Sunday, we had Brad Park over for brunch. I don't think he had ever eaten lox and bagels and whatever else we served. But we had a good time, and we never felt that we were privileged to be able to afford it. But I didn't feel like a privileged person, and my husband didn't either. We didn't bring our children up to feel like we're not privileged. We're lucky, maybe, but we're not privileged. And I don't know why. I know when I was in elementary school, my father was a comfortable father, and but we didn't throw it around. We didn't advertise it. It was just that we could afford certain things that maybe a lot of people couldn't afford, but we never threw it around like it was something that we were entitled to. And I'll never forget one of the young men who was in one of my classes in elementary school. He says, "Oh, well, you can do that. You can do this because you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth," which was an expression that was very common in those days. And I went home not crying one time because I didn't know what he meant. And my mother just said, "Don't worry about it. It's all right. They don't mean anything wrong." I had a teacher who said a very Semitic thing to me one time when my parents purchased a house in Forest Hills. And she said, "Didn't you buy this such and such house?" And I said, "Yes, my parents did." And he says, "Oh, well, I guess they'll be typical Jews and buy the house at a good price and then sell it for a lot of money." And I never thought I would ever hear anything like that because that wasn't my parents. And when I told my mother, she just said, "Don't let it get to you. There are some people who aren't nice." And I was said,
Listen, in 100 years, you're certainly going to come across some not so nice things, but I like that no matter what, it doesn't knock your spirit down and your message. And at the end of the day, as you said it best, it's all about the message. And we can tell, Bea, that you certainly live your life that way. And I think you need to write a book with all these stories. It's really next on your agenda.
I have heard that before, that I should put it in writing, but no one seems to want to take up on it, and because I can't write it myself. But it's been fun for me. I enjoy these interviews, and I really love it because this is part of living, and it's fun. You have to get fun out of life when you can, because you're not going to be around. I'm not going to be around forever, and I want to make sure that my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren all know what they should do with their lives. And that's to get the best out of it.
Well, that's
the
a perfect
attitude, is tremendous and beautiful, and we could all learn from it. And it's something that, very admirable. And I hope I get to your point in life. I really do.
Well, I've enjoyed speaking with you, and maybe someday I'll get Ken to bring me. Are you located on the Post campus?
Yeah, come visit us.
I am going to tell Ken I want to meet you because it's better to.
I like it. Let's make a date.
Okay.
Well, here at the end of your interview, I want to thank you so much, Bea Franklin, aka Busy Bea, aka Supermom, aka our friend now. She is a Nassau County resident, Centenarian, and you are just absolutely incredible. We would like to thank everyone today who has joined us. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.